You're a literary agent, you're a publisher. So my question is, AI is sort of here. Is it impacting your industry yet?
We could probably talk about AI in publishing for 3 hours.
Well, let's start talking about it now.
Every aspect of the business is being touched by AI.
Somebody has used someone's name who wrote a similar book. AI has done a competitive book and put the name of that author on it.
Who owns the intellectual property? Who owns the copyright? That's a real concern, and the government needs to step up here and bring some clarity to the table about copyright law.
It's really stealing you.
Can I say to AI, write me a novel?
You can. You absolutely could. And that is really one of the scariest things that we're facing. 60% of authors, I think, are using AI in their work, yes.
That is scandalous.
Just don't short the publishing industry. That's the
Can't. Nothing to short.
We need to work together to figure out a way forward and work together to continue to find readers and publish great books.
I would say that AI is not going to replace creativity. It's just going to determine who gets paid for it.
Explain that to me. Hi, this is Steve Eisman, and welcome to another episode of the Real Eisman Playbook. We're going to go in a different direction today. The origin of today's interview is a conversation that I had with my wife, Valerie. This is her idea. I think it's a great one. And it's about, we were having a conversation about the themes that have evolved over the many months that we've been doing this podcast. And one of the major themes that we've been dealing with is how quickly things have changed, how it took a lot longer for industries to change years ago, and how we're going through revolutionary changes right now, AI. And what I thought we would do today is explore how some of those changes have happened and what's going to happen with AI through an industry that's near and dear to my heart, but doesn't get a lot of publicity, which is the book publishing industry. And today, to help me explore this very broad theme is, to my immediate left, Regina Brooks, who runs Serendipity Literary Agency. She's a literary agent.
Yes.
Jennifer Weis, an old friend of the Weis Agency, who's also a literary agent. And finally, a newcomer, Anthony Ziccardi of Post Hill Books. You are the publisher. So let's open it up. Let's open it up to how things have, let's put AI aside for a second, and let's just talk about the last 15, 20 years. You're a literary agent, you're a publisher. How has the industry changed, in your view? Regina, why don't we start with you?
Oh, in a number of different ways. I would say, number one, the way that authors come into the business now is definitely different from 15 to 20 years ago. Let's take nonfiction, for example. If you were an expert and you had a really great idea and you had an audience of people who were interested in your work, you could write a book and get it out into the world and people would be super excited about it. Now, you have to have a platform. And what is a platform? A platform in the publishing industry takes the form of a number of different things. But one of the first things that publishers look for is your social media numbers. Yes,
Of course.
Right. So
you need a social media presence,
Yes.
even to get off the ground.
Yeah. And, even like maybe 5 to 7 years ago, if you were doing courses or you were on the speaker circuit, you could still get a book published because you had an audience. But now those social media numbers are so important, even if you do have those other things.
So just to stop you for a second, so
Yeah.
if I am the world's leading expert on a certain, let's call it very important historical topic, and I want to write a very important history book, but I have no social media presence whatsoever, I can't get published.
You can still get published, but they will want you to be out in the world in the social media sphere.
I see.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah. So, it's the way that it's the way that audiences discover your work. So, it used to be going to the bookstores, you would do events.
What's that?
I know. There were ways that historically people would find out about your book. And social media now is one of the first, on-ramps to people discovering your work.
Jen?
Well, to pick up on that, so that's the way authors are coming in. I have a little bit of a slightly different thing. I mean, if you are a world expert and you're a doctor, for example, and you don't have social media, you will be bought by the publisher for recognizing that you are singular and important. However, that discoverability kicks in anyway,
Immediately.
and that takes you to marketing and publicity, which I think are one of the areas, obviously, because of the proliferation of different sites and the way discoverability happens being so different, that publishing, marketing and promotion and publicity are some of the most problematic areas today because the landscape is limitless, where at one time it was limited. Used to be you did 5 things to publicize a book, to market a book, and now you're dealing with a completely different landscape to create that discoverability.
Anthony, what do you have to say?
For me, it's Amazon, Amazon, Amazon. They've completely changed the game of publishing.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
How so?
I mean, in so many different ways, how books are discovered, the ebook sort of evolution from not even existing literally 20 years ago to being 25% of the market now. I think in many cases it's higher depending upon the category.
Do physical books still outsell ebooks?
Yes.
They do.
So ebooks have plateaued. However, audiobooks have picked up dramatically in the last 5 years. I mean, it's at a level now where it's probably surpassing ebooks.
Really?
It is surpassing ebooks.
So break it down to me. Out of every 100 books that are sold, how many are ebooks, how many are audiobooks, how many are just books?
I would say out of 100 books, I would say 20 ebooks, 25, 30 audiobooks, and 50 print.
Really?
Yeah.
And I think it depends also on the category.
Yes.
Very much so.
100%.
So like celebrity books, they do much better in audio.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is that because the celebrity is reading the audio?
Sometimes it's because the celebrity is reading the audio, but also the people who come to those books, they'd rather hear it than read it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Some people who are buying celebrity memoirs are not avid readers. They may be
Exactly.
buying the book for just because they like that a particular celebrity.
Mm-hmm.
So for them, the audiobook just makes more sense. Also, Amazon and how they treat audio with Audible, which they acquired, 10 years ago, however long ago that is, it's almost become like the Netflix model. You sign up for your monthly fee and you can download as many audios as you want for a certain fee. And then it's for audiobooks, the transition from listening to a podcast to then listening to the audio is just now seamless. And I think that's been a big impact on our business the last couple of years.
Absolutely. I just want to say something about that. The proliferation of podcasts has made the audience much more comfortable with long-form listening. Yeah.
Okay.
Because before, people would listen to books, but the other piece, too, is people are super busy.
Right.
And to sit down with a book to read, may take you 8 to 12 hours. It's so much easier to wash your dishes and listen.
Right.
Be in your car and listen.
And people buy multiple formats, right?
Right.
They buy multiple formats for whatever they're doing. If you flip to something like the fiction category and romantasy, which we were talking about a few minutes ago, which is fantasy.
Define romantasy.
Romantasy is romance crossed with fantasy.
Like
It can be
Outlander.
every bit
Yes.
of a necromancer or a witch
Yes.
or a sorcerer.
Or going back in time
or
like in
going back in
Outlander.
time. Exactly. But that category, for example, recently has demonstrated a huge appetite for print. To savor a print edition. So even though authors in the romantasy category may have started out in ebook, paperback, self-published, they can end up with deluxe editions. This is the new trend.
What do you mean? What do you mean deluxe editions?
editions of a compilation of their works together with specially etched end papers and maps and all kinds of additives to the format that make it both gift and otherwise, and collectible. So that's another, the range of appetite of readership is really great.
And one of the reasons why those special edition books have become super popular is because of the fact that as soon as you put a book out into the world, AI kind of captures it, and there's all these duplicates of your book. So these special editions, print editions, make it more possible for the author to make money.
I see.
Yeah.
So let me ask a question. So given the changes in the role of Amazon, you're a publisher, but you're literary agents. Has the power shifted from publishers to literary agents or from literary agents to publishers, or is it more or less the same?
I'm going to jump in and say, I think literary agents always have the power. To me, Steve, it comes back to the book.
Okay.
If you got the goods,
Yes.
you got the power.
Yes.
And it's an old lesson, and things have not changed in that regard.
So what's the difference between being a literary agent versus being basically a publishing house? Is there really a difference, or is it
absolutely
significant difference?
Okay, so let's talk about that.
So one is a buyer. I mean, a publisher is managing the entire inside of a publishing house. You speak to that.
Yeah, I think, the process of getting a book published, that's where we really come in. The behind the scenes of editing, formatting, cover design.
Who's the editor here? Are you the editor or are you the editor?
More often than not, the agent takes the first stab at the editorial process.
That's an area of discussion and challenge. Yeah.
The agent, sometimes we do expect that an agent is delivering us a manuscript that's in pretty good shape, that, we still do. The idea of an editor and the trade of an editor really doing a deep dive developmentally is really a dying breed in this industry, which is unfortunate.
So can I say something about that? To me, one of the most absolutely fascinating things that I've ever sort of experienced is reading To Kill a Mockingbird and then reading the prequel, and which came out after she died,
Right.
and realizing that what had happened was the prequel is not a prequel. It actually takes place after To Kill a Mockingbird. And what must have happened is her editor, whose name I can't remember, who apparently was like one of the all-time great editors in history, took her first novel, which I have to tell you, that it was not good. and there's a like one page in that novel which is basically a summation of To Kill a Mockingbird. And what must have happened was that he told her, this is your novel. Right. Go back and write an entirely different novel based on this one page.
That happens.
And she did.
Right.
And so that's an editor.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're saying that's a dying breed?
I
Why?
think so. I think the industry is changing, and a lot of the old guard is no longer here. These legendary editors, the Bob Loomis and the Sonny Madas of the world. These are people I came up with, and the new class of editors that are now entering the business from their English majors at Columbia or where have you. I just think it's a different breed. They have different mandates. They have different.
What do you mean different mandates?
About how they need to acquire and how many books they need to acquire. The days of acquiring a book and waiting 3 years to publish it are long gone. I mean, the publishers want to publish. They need to get books out the door. They need to feed the beast.
So can I just pause you a second? So what you're telling me is that today, because of the business pressures, an editor cannot be so focused just on one book.
The editor's role, I was an editor for 30 years, left that job in 2019 and became an agent. And so I see the crossover. I've gone from one side of the house, which was as a buyer, right, of material, to being a seller. And the editor's role really changed in those last 5 years to become a marketer.
Which 5 years are we talking about?
The 5 years, say, before I left. So the 15 to 19. And then since then, the editor's role is to be as much of a marketer internally and to be a cheerleader for the project, right? Which involves all kinds of other tasks that were layered onto the original idea of an editor sitting in
let's go back. What was the original idea?
The original idea
was
is an editor worked with a writer very closely and could spend sometimes years if the writer had promised but needed a lot of drafts back and forth. We all hear about novels and so forth that took years or famous history professors who took years to do their series or whatever. Robert Caro. I mean, just think about Robert Caro.
We're still waiting.
We're still
waiting for the last book. I've read all the books. Where is it?
Exactly.
We're waiting. And so that original concept, the editor is really out of his or her office now, right? They're doing all these other things. They're feeding to Amazon. They're feeding to the sales department. They're coming up with publicity ideas. They're responsible for compliance of all the departments, making sure the covers are right, being an overseer of the process under the publisher and with the publisher. The agent on the outside is providing that original content and doing more. We started to talk about this, and you can have more and more of that original editor's job.
Are you saying, are you doing editing? Do you do a lot of editing?
Absolutely.
Tons.
There is no book that gets submitted that I have not done some editorial work on.
But would you say?
I would agree.
Please, go ahead. I'm sorry. Would you say that there's less editing going on today than there used to be?
Editing at the agent level or
just overall?
Absolutely.
I think
absolutely.
so. 100%.
Absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely. 100%. One of the things that we just did a conference, the Association of American Literary Agents. I'm the president of that organization. And we just did a conference. And one of the panels was about, we called it the invisible weight. And the reason we called it the invisible weight is because both editors and agents have kind of this whole ecosystem of things that we're responsible for that is to some extent outside of the definition of our job or our role. It's like helping our authors understand how to build a platform, helping our authors understand the different tools that are available in the business now. It's not just, write your book and send it to the publisher and then the publisher will publish it and market it and promote it. There's all these things that the author is responsible for. And we become not only the educators, but also the consultants to some extent to the author to help them understand how to be successful in this business. And it's not easy. Yeah. And things are shifting quickly. So I always tell my staff, it's like, just when you think you know, think again, because things are shifting so fast that, the things that you thought were happening maybe a year ago, rules have changed.
Like what?
Yeah. When an agent makes a deal, it's not always about the most money. Right? The agent tries to ascertain from the author what the author's goals are. Is it to make the best match with the best publishing house possible? Is it to where there's really an aligned vision? That's why most books are sold after a meeting, especially more and more. That's another big change, right? That publishers always want to meet an author now before they acquire something.
The authors before?
They did not.
If it was a big book, yes. For the big books, yes.
A big financial commitment, absolutely. But now it's routine. Now it is really routine. That
The other thing, too, is that agents are fiduciaries. So we are responsible for getting the best deal. And sometimes that's financial, and sometimes it's, these other aspects. So you might go with a publishing company who's giving you a modest advance, but they've made the kind of commitment to marketing and promotion that you're hoping to see success on the back end. So as a literary agent, it's our responsibility to understand the nuances of those types of deals.
So before we get to AI, I want to ask a sort of a more personal question. Once in a blue moon, I read a book, usually a novel. Doesn't happen very often, where I say to myself, whoa, like, this is unbelievable. That's not the norm, but it does happen. How many times has that happened to the three of you? And what does that feel like, and what do you do about it?
I'll say I did a lot of early fiction, debut fiction, when I was at St. Martin's Press in those years. And for me, with a novel, it's losing track of time, right? Where I sit down and I stand up after reading it and I'm like, that has been an experience that has transported me. It doesn't happen that often. I remember, probably I would say maybe 10 times in my career if I had to add it up.
Regina?
It's interesting because as a literary agent, we're constantly getting things coming to us. And I can tell you that a lot of things seem like, oh, I just read that. Oh, I read that same thing before. There was a project that I was working on. It was a graphic novel called Victory Stand. And every time the illustrator sent me some of the illustrations to take a look at, it gave me life. It really gave me life. And I could tell as it was being developed, our business is hard. We deal with rejection every day. And so you're constantly trying to keep yourself, self-talk, and you're trying to keep yourself up. That book kept me going. It's like, this is the reason you're doing this. It ended up being a finalist for the National Book Award. So you can,
What's it called?
It's called Victory Stand.
Victory Stand.
Yeah, it's a graphic novel. And I kind of knew, like, if anyone was feeling even a portion of what I was feeling as the book was being developed, that it was going to catch fire.
For me, it was definitely on a personal level. I was tipped off to a book that was about to be self-published, and this is going back when self-publishing was just really finding its footing. And I was introduced to an author. Her name was Lisa Genova, and she wrote a book called Still Alice. And
well, they made it into a movie.
Yes, and Julianne Moore won the Academy Award.
It was an amazing movie.
And at the time, for me, when I was handed the manuscript in its early stage, my mother was just diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. So it struck a personal note for me, and I acquired it, and it was a phenomenal bestseller. It was probably one of the biggest books I've ever published, though. So, I think if something really touches you personally, now for me, I also publish a lot of nonfiction. So then for me, it's more of a gut instinct. What's the market look like? Where's the sort of, and particularly for current events, where's the news trend heading? And it's a different kind of feel. But for fiction, I think it has to touch you at a personal level.
I want to tell a story of, just for a minute, of one of the best experiences and worst experiences of my publishing career, which was just publishing Ellen Hildebrand's first novel.
Oh, okay.
And then who has, now lasted, 30 years since then, or 20 years since then. And, what was interesting about that, we published 5 books at St. Martin's, and it was on book number 6, I believe. It could have been 5, that she became a mega bestseller. And that was an example of an editor who had the chance to develop work with a writer over time.
Which
that
is
is
you.
Another thing that has changed.
That doesn't happen anymore.
Yes, that was
Yeah.
I. And so what you could see in those first 5 books was an author who was writing in a regional area in Nantucket. And every single book that came out that we were doing, we tried to push sales further and say, you got to get this out. You got to get this national. You got to make this international. And, they grew her very slowly. She was very ambitious. She wanted more. And finally, on book number 5, there was a change. And half the book was a much bigger canvas and half of the book was not. And I said, Ellen, something big is coming.
I'm not following. What do you mean half of the book was
half
bigger?
of the book was a richer and deeper book than what she had written prior.
Okay.
Right? So the book itself was different. And I said, Ellen, something big is coming. And then she wrote Barefoot. And Barefoot was the book that took her into
level.
a different level. So it was a combination of the book, but it also represents a period of time when we did have, as editors,
There was much more
the chance
patience.
to build an author.
And you don't have that today.
And that
No.
is much less common today.
No.
That
The
is
publishers-
a tough,
Yeah, the publishers want entrepreneurs. They want people who are coming in with the idea of, okay, I'm writing this book, but I'm getting ready to go out and push this product. And it's kind of a sad part of our industry right now because, and I wanted to say something about that instinct.
Yeah.
Editors used to be really rewarded for instinct and gut, and now it's shifted to data.
Yeah.
What do you mean data?
So we'll look at a concept, or he was talking about current trends, and they'll look to see, okay, is this trending? Is this a topic that's trending? Is this
Social media
platform?
Yeah.
They'll look at the data around the social media platform. There are imprints that all they do is acquire by data. It's not even necessarily.
How do you acquire? I don't know what that
Bloom
means.
is an example.
They'll
So-
take a book and they'll say, okay, in this category, a book like this will sell this many copies.
Right.
The data that's available to us
Shows
now is better than it ever has been before, even though publishers have been notoriously bad with data and capturing data. Amazon is very guarded with their data, but they still give us sales trends, and you can see what's trending on Amazon, which is the other thing. So that's how it's changed. But I joke around a lot. There's not a lot of creativity left in publishing. It's
Well, if you're going to go where the data goes and somebody shows up with something unique, there's no data.
Well, that's the problem.
Well, that's the
and that's why a
problem.
lot of great books may be missed, or
They are getting missed.
Yeah, or they're having a tougher time finding their sort of groove, if you will. I mean, it took George R.R. Martin several books, 8 or 9 books before he was really, discovered. And I think also as Hollywood is changing and how books are being discovered there what studios are willing to do. Studios were known to make books back in the day. Now it's almost the flip side. Netflix wants to see.
You need the IP.
Exactly.
They need that underlying IP now.
So Netflix needs to see
They want to see a book
published
more so. The days of buying a book in its early stages, particularly on the Hollywood side, are few and far between.
Yeah.
I see. So they want to see a book published with numbers on Amazon,
and
then they'll buy it.
And an existing audience.
So the same way we're looking at data, they're looking at data.
Right.
So
and publishing is, I've always seen publishing as venture capital for ideas. And
that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
But it's become
it's not so much that anymore.
Exactly. It's moved away, and that takes the fun out of it.
Yeah.
I mean,
the analysts are running the room now.
Right.
More so than
I understand. All right, so let's just switch gears for a little bit. Let's talk about AI. I'll give you my experience with AI, just my first introduction to it. That blew me out of the water. So I asked AI a question. I said, write me a 5-page essay about is morality absolute or relative? And I want 2 essays. One in the voice of Alistair McIntyre, who was a philosopher that I had read when I was in college, and one in the voice of Judge Richard Posner, who was someone that I had read all these. I figured, okay, no way. I mean, this is so obscure.
Was this ChatGPT?
This was ChatGPT.
Okay.
So I put it in. Ding, 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 ding. 30 seconds later, 2 essays showed up. It blew me out of the water. I couldn't believe it. I mean, they were so good.
What was your opinion? Were they?
They were excellent. It would have taken me a month to go back and reread the 2 relevant books and then be able to write a 5-page essay. I was shocked. So my question is, AI is sort of here. Is it impacting your industry yet? And if it is, how is it impacting?
60% of authors, I think, are using AI in
Really?
their work.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. And that has happened so
That is
quickly.
scandalous.
That has happened
And it
so
depends
quickly.
on what you mean by using it too,
Correct.
because AI is.
It's a
we
big
could we could
canvas.
probably talk about AI in publishing for 3 hours.
Well, let's
and
start
still-
talking about it now.
So let's think about it from the tool perspective.
Okay.
Right. So there are AI tools that will help publishers develop covers, create marketing copy for a book, will help do research for you. Like if you were working on a book and you needed research done, you'd use Perplexity. There are different LLMs for different uses. Right. And so there are platforms that will edit your book for you. There are platforms who
What do you mean edit my book for me?
edit your book.
Instead of hiring somebody.
Instead of hiring a developmental editor or a copy editor, there are platforms. You put your manuscript in, and it will give you feedback on what's working, what's not working. It'll tell you how to fix your pacing.
Wow.
It'll tell you how to develop your characters.
Really?
Yep, to make them more 3-dimensional. Yes.
Wow.
Yes. So
that's from your perspective.
Every aspect of the business is being touched by AI.
Can I say to AI, write me a novel?
And that's different from the creativity. You can. You absolutely
You can.
could.
What
shows
That
up?
is really one of the scariest things that we're facing.
And I think most publishers are rejecting that. Even Amazon has
Yes.
come out and said, we're going to reject anything that's completely AI.
How do they know?
And there are tools that will allow you to go in and determine whether a project is created by a human and or if it has been developed by AI.
Well, and what's happening also is what someone will do out there is they'll see a hot subject matter or a hot topic or a current event that's doing really well. They'll AI generate a book very similar to the existing book, and Amazon has been pretty good.
And they will sometimes use use the person's name as well, who wrote another book on the subject, and they look very, very similar.
Right.
Yeah.
I was at a cocktail party this week, where that happened.
So, explain that again. More detail.
Where somebody has used someone's name who wrote a similar book, and is now writing a competitive. AI has done a competitive book and put the name of that author on it.
So the piracy issue.
Are they publishing
issue,
it?
and it's published through
Published through Amazon.
self-published it or
Right.
published it through Amazon.
I will say Amazon is getting better at monitoring it and responding to people who are calling out the piracy because it's a problem. I think for publishers, beyond what you were saying too about the editorial process, for us, you start to wonder, for publishers that have, books on gardening or, if you want to learn to be an auto mechanic or just do it yourselfer, are those books going away because
It's interesting
you could
because
go on AI and look it all up?
They had started to kind of the number of those kind of books had already started to decline
Right.
because of
the internet.
the internet.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
And
You
so
know.
now with AI being super smart, you don't
Right.
necessarily need to
Right.
even kind of search around Google to get answers. It's just right
Right
there for your.
Well,
for
and
your,
it's like you remember when 10 years ago, 20 years ago, we all had those dummies books, dummies
Yeah.
for this, dummies for that.
Exactly.
Right.
That whole brand, it makes you
And
wonder.
a lot of British packagers. Do you remember all the
Yeah.
day of when packagers used to
Yeah.
put together books that were generic, right?
Right.
Within a
Right.
category
Right.
like
Right.
gardening.
Yeah.
Right.
And so this, in a way, is a replacement to that.
It's interesting to see how some of these categories are going to be under siege, if you will, with regards to whether or not you still need a book to learn how to.
I was going to say what I think is going to stay is the unduplicatable nature of a writer's book, right? The individual's experience being non-duplicatable.
Okay.
And that is what I find that publishers are looking for right now. I mean, one of my authors, who is head of Cedars-Sinai Memory Disorders Clinic, he's sort of the only person in a way who could write a book called What to Remember When You're Forgetting, which is driven by all of his
Kind of like the sequel to
research.
Still Alice.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
That's right. And someone like that, you just cannot replicate. And whether he used AI to research a point that he wanted to hear from other doctors on or something like this, it's hard to believe that he could, at this point, right, get the same thing.
Well,
And
personal
I would say
development.
that
Yeah.
AI is not going to replace creativity. It's just going to determine who gets paid for it.
Well, that's
Explain
that's
that.
the
Explain
big,
that to me.
Yeah, that's
I'm
the
not
big
quite sure I follow that.
So, as a literary agent, one of the things that I'm really trying to make sure that I'm clear about and can support my authors on is the licensing model. So if you know that your material is going to be fed into these large language
Training.
models to train, authors need to be compensated for their materials going into the
Right.
models. And right now, that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah. There was a
So
landmark
there's
case
the
recently,
Anthropic-
the
Anthropic, which just
case.
settled for
Lawsuit.
$1.5 billion.
Right.
And quite frankly, I don't even know how yet the authors are going to get paid in this.
Well, we're working on it.
It's been confusing and complicating and frustrating for the authors, I think.
Yes.
And-
Yes,
Very.
it's
So
a,
I guess
there's a
explain me the
process.
nature of the problem. I write a
$1,000
book
Right.
Right.
and it gets fed into Anthropic, and then what
Well,
happens?
Anthropic
Into
just
Claude, which
Yeah.
is the Claude, which is the LLM, the large language model.
Okay, so they took my novel. Now
Right.
what do they do with it? How
Well,
does that
they
hurt
It's
me?
being used. It's just like if someone wants to write a book like Steve, if your material's already in there, they can then
Right.
say,
Take it
"Oh,
out,
we have
put Steve
information
on
on
it."
how the profile,
How Steve writes a
how
book.
he writes
That's
a
right.
book."
and
Exactly.
they're teaching their own systems. They're learning everything there is to
It's
know
stealing.
about you.
It's really
Right.
stealing
Yeah.
you.
Your intellectual
Yeah.
property,
I see.
right?
In the
They
case
just
of
took it.
In the
Yeah.
case
Yeah.
of Anthropic, they took it. Now there are other AI platforms that have reached out to publishers
Right.
and tried to work out deals whereby they paid for the right to take that content, the intellectual property of the book, the copyright, and feed it up to their learning systems.
Right.
The problem with that is none of this technology existed. So do publishers own the rights to do that? It's the same thing we all went
It's the
through
deal
20
with-
years
with
ago with
ebooks.
ebooks.
It's with
Nobody
ebooks.
had
Yeah.
ebook rights back
The
then.
contract
I
has to
see.
change.
So-
The entire world of contract negotiations.
So who owns the intellectual property? Who owns the copyright? That's a real concern, and the government needs to step up here too and bring some clarity to the table about copyright law.
Yeah, and you
They've
see
been
where
very
we are
slow.
with copyright.
They've been very slow on this. I mean, we were talking about this a year ago because this presaged the period that we're in now. But now, like you said, the rapid fire development and the
Right.
proliferation of different AI programs, right, is making it ever more complicated.
I would also say, this isn't new in terms of IP being taken or stolen. It happened in the music industry. And, what the music
Took
industry...
the music industry 15 years to recuperate.
And there's the thing. And they had to shift their model.
Yes.
So what happened was, originally people, like back in the back day, people would...
I mean, when we were all young.
Yes, when we were young. People would do an album, and then they would go on tour to get people to buy the album. Right? And then that shifted because now... the music's kind of given away, so to speak. It's very low margin, and you make the money
on concerts.
At concerts, right? And so I think the book publishing industry and authors are going to have to figure out what is going to be their out in the world connecting with community around their content. And the reality is that people buy books from people at a certain point, especially nonfiction, because of the person. They're driven by the individual, sometimes by the content, but more often than not now, they're being driven by, I want to buy one of Steve's books. It doesn't matter what it is. They just want to support you. And so that's another reason why platform seems to be so important.
Well, that's why cookbooks, you would say to yourself, why does anyone need to read a cookbook or buy a cookbook when all the recipes are online, but they're buying it more for the personality, the Instagrammer, the TikToker.
And the authenticity.
Yes.
That's right.
But I also think, what for me, where I'm bullish about publishing, and there's a lot to be worried about right now, certainly, but we've survived the ebook revolution, if you will, and we've only gotten stronger. I think what you're seeing now is a trend, if you believe it, is particularly with Gen Z, where they're turning away from their devices and turning away from the digitalization of the world. They want to hold and grasp things. And to me, that's a sign that's good news for publishing, good news for printed books, good news for unique stories. And I think that's something that the publishing industry needs to embrace and get behind and support, because reading is
fundamental.
Correct. and it's been a part of our culture for over, for centuries.
Thousands of years. So speaking of the topic, you said there are things you're worried about, and there are things you're positive about. So you started. What are you most worried about, and what are you most positive about your industry right now?
Let somebody else take that one first. I'm going to think about it.
Regina, what are you worried about?
I'm worried that the level of advances that an author gets are going to start to shrink.
Because
there are so many books being pushed at publishers, and they're going to have, because there's so much content out in the world, they're going to become even more
discerning,
narrow in the number of books that they publish, and the type of books they publish, and the type of authors that they publish. So, and for what it's worth, the number of literary agents in the world is growing. Our organization has almost doubled in the number of people who are a part of our organization.
Why do you think that is?
That's interesting.
Former publishers getting into the agency business.
I was going to say, a lot of people who are in the business, working for traditional publishers are now becoming literary agents. I think that's one. And I think that the other thing is because content seems to be very accessible. So
what do you mean accessible?
Meaning like, you don't if I start out my agency, I can like go online and look for some influencers and look for people who have, huge platforms, reach out to those folks and really sell a book. Historically, you needed to have some knowledge of the business, right? You needed to understand contracts. You needed to understand, have an instinct for what kind of books people are going to be interested in. But because platform, at least in nonfiction, because platform is such a big driving force, as a if I'm starting out as a literary agent, there's a kind of a playbook.
So there are book influencers?
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah,
I would say when I think about it, I think what I'm worried about is the competition of content. And
meaning
the need
for the traditional publisher?
Yes, for a publisher and for authors and for literary agents and for the whole field. I am worried about the competition that we're seeing in every which way from podcast, that is taking up people's time. And that is cannibalizing, taking people's time away from
the book,
the act of reading. And so when I meet a lot of people and they ask me, well, don't you think that publishing is losing ground because they have ebooks? They don't really understand that content is parsed in many different ways. And if you do control the essence of content as a publisher going forward, then you're controlling something, right? Which we're talking about the IP, because there are formats we're not even thinking of yet. I mean,
Absolutely.
we may, I mean, it may be, who knows? I mean, it could be implanted in our brain and it's only a couple paragraphs, but it sums up the whole book. And I think we have to be forward thinking about really controlling that what content means across all these things, and recognizing that there should be a
People need
paid
to be
element to
compensated for
everything, because otherwise we are going to lose ground to all these other different formats. And it used to be as simple as, a multimedia content that was multimedia belonged to the agent because they represented the author fully, and the publisher could not have multimedia rights, right? Because that connoted a different format.
Right.
So that is all up in the air now.
I would say that the next chapter of publishing is going to be, and also in terms of our survival as an industry, is going to be how consumers get access to the creative work. And it's kind of tied to what you just said.
As what you just said.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
That's
What do you mean how consumers get access to the creative work?
What portals what portals they go on?
How it's delivered to them, quite
How
frankly.
it's delivered to them.
Audiobook, ebook.
And I will, again, I agree 100%. I think what publishing has been hearing for the last 50 years, TV is going to be the ruination, radio, podcast, Netflix, and we're still here. I think it's the same way what's going on in the movie industry.
Right.
Everyone during COVID, everyone's like movie theaters are dead.
Right.
Yeah, but I went to the movies and saw Nuremberg
Exactly.
the other night.
And
How was it?
I thought it was good, a little simplistic, a little simplistic.
Simplistic?
Yeah.
But people, the theaters have found a way, the studios have found a way. People will evolve. And I do think that it's going to take a lot to take down this industry. And I think it's a very resilient industry.
Very resilient.
And I do think a lot of us are trained as young children how to read. And it's the most important aspect of a person's life. Is reading a book.
Right.
And I think that, I don't see a parent giving their 6-month-old an AI chip to plant in their ear to learn. I think they're going to want them to be interactive and flip through the book and read. It's part of our nature. And I think that's one of the things that you can feel positive and bullish about when you look to the future of what publishing will be and how content will be delivered to people.
And I would say one of the things that I'm super bullish on is the fact that I don't know if the next literary movement is going to come from New York or from the UK.
That's a great point.
I think it's going to be from places.
Global.
Yeah, it's global. It's it's going to come from Nigeria or maybe the UAE, where I just left, the Sharjah Book Conference. I was blown away by the number of countries that came to that conference, and Seoul, like Korea and Dubai and Lagos. A lot of there's so much content that is untapped in those spaces.
And so when you sell a book as a literary agent, one of the things you assess from the beginning is what you think the global potential is, right? And sometimes it surprises you so much. But I have a book called The Joy of Solitude right now that has just been selling. We've probably sold it in 8 countries already. And what's so surprising and interesting is all the different media outlets in every country who come back saying that they want the author. So that's another exponential growth of exposure.
Right.
And we never had that before. It used to be a country just took it out. They would publish it. They would just put it through a different cover maybe, or, there are all kinds of partnerships globally that are going on.
Business books in particular.
The other way
Business
too.
books?
Business books in the Asian market.
That's right.
Translations
It's
it's booming right now.
Really?
But the other way too,
South Korea.
we're talking about pushing our content out to these other markets. I'm saying those markets are going to be pushing their content to us too, in the U.S. market.
The other thing too, getting back to what drives publishing, what sets the trend. We had a lot of cultural phenomenons over the last 30 years. When you think of J.K. Rowling with Harry Potter, you think of Oprah and her book club. We haven't had one of those cultural events in publishing that I can think of in the last 5 years. I mean,
What about the book club?
I don't think Colleen Hoover you can say, but that's that had a moment where I'm talking about something that lasted a decade, or more.
Rebecca
And
Yarros.
it's been, I don't think anything has moved books the way Oprah certainly has done. I mean, you can make the case for Reese Witherspoon. You can make a case for, Jenna Bush, but I don't think
that's
they're
not the
anywhere
same
at the
way.
level of
Now,
Oprah.
why do you think that is?
I think competition for our minds and our time.
Yeah.
Podcasts like this,
Yeah.
people are really
Well,
paying attention to podcasts. If you think about mainstream media, the networks, and the number of people who are actually watching the cable networks, CNN, MSNBC, Fox, there are podcasters who have like triple the number of listeners and viewerships than our mainstream and cable news.
And the trend I'm seeing. Sorry, the trend I'm seeing, and it's a great point about the podcast too. Getting back to Oprah, everyone was watching Oprah.
Everybody watched Oprah.
So
That's
she
right.
announced her book pick. 1 million people ran out and bought the book. Now, no offense to podcasts, you listen to Joe Rogan or you listen to your podcast, not everyone's listening to it at the same time.
Right, that's
not
true.
everyone is learning about the book or learning about that topic at the same time, same hour of day, where you're seeing the Amazon rank skyrocket within the hour. So I think that has changed buying patterns, which has also impacted, I refer to a lot in publishing, the long tail of a book.
Right.
There is a long tail that I think we haven't seen in a very long time, which is also encouraging, because people are discovering the book.
Yeah, publishers don't have a lot of patience with the long tail.
Well, that's the problem.
I
Yes.
mean, they're
What do you mean the
constant-
long
well, they
tail
want,
book?
What's called backlist
pre-orders.
sales.
Yeah.
Well, I thought a long tail meant backlist sales.
No, I know
Both.
it does, but
Yeah.
I'm saying that publishers want pre-orders now, and they want, similar to the movie industry, what happened that first weekend.
So it's all data-driven again.
Right,
Exactly.
The other thing about, so you get away from the Oprah and you get away from the one person, even though there's like a Jenna Bush or whatever, Read with Jenna and these various clubs. But you also have all these other sites that readers are working through, like BookTok and Goodreads. And these are where readers are connecting also directly with authors in a way where they never really did before, right? On a much grander scale,
What do you mean?
bigger
How do they
scale.
connect with the authors?
It's direct to consumer. Yeah.
So in other words, you
there
publish
are
a book and
sites-
you're communicating on this site with your readers.
And that's the whole thing about platform. Because and the funny thing about it is there are self-published authors who are very keen and tapped into their community.
And that's where Colleen Hoover came
Exactly.
from, or Rebecca Yarros with the Fourth Estate.
Yep.
And her series, which has really gone on for 7 years now, and also backed up by movies and everything else.
And that was all TikTok generated.
And that was all TikTok generated.
TikTok.
So these are big movers.
I'm shocked
now.
that TikTok could generate, because it's people who watch TikTok don't watch it for more than 30
But
seconds.
BookTok is a feature of TikTok. So
TikTok,
BookTok is the specific.
It became so influential
influencer.
that if you walk into Barnes & Noble, they actually have, as seen on TikTok, BookTok tables, literally in the front of their store. So that's where they used to have an Oprah section. Now they have the TikTok section. So, and also the problem with TikTok, it's very narrow in scope in the type of categories and books that sell well.
Like what do you mean?
It's mostly fiction, woman. It's not men's thrillers. It's not current events. It's not history. It's more, quite frankly, cheesy woman.
Romance.
Yeah,
Where
romance.
people
Yeah.
used
But
to
they're
rely on
trying
a
to
bestseller.
expand
They
that,
are,
though. They're
but
trying
they
to
are.
expand that.
Where people used to rely solely on the New York Times Book Review.
Yes, I remember those days.
You remember those
Yeah.
days? Or, today you have awards that are conferred by these different sites where they're the Goodreads Reader's Choice Awards, right? So then they feel this is a populist designation of what the best reads really are.
Yeah.
So
But
it's a whole...
it's funny. If Trump shut down TikTok, I think it would have done more damage to publishing than any other industry,
That's
quite
right.
frankly.
That's
Yeah.
true.
Absolutely.
I think that's
Really?
I think
true.
publishers were very nervous about
marketing
it.
people in the in-house marketing people have come to rely so heavily on TikTok in certain categories.
TikTok more than anything else.
I would say
Well,
so.
that and the platform of the author.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I would say for certain categories, TikTok is bigger
it.
than anything else
Yeah,
right now.
yeah.
It's incredible.
The reason publishing continues to exist, in my opinion, is that hope springs eternal.
Yes.
And when you're an editor in a publishing house, such as I was, we got P&Ls individually on our books that we published, and year in and year out, what was always sort of life-affirming to me in the field was that half of my books made money and half didn't. And it was just that the half that made money made so much more money than the ones that didn't, which is why I kept my job, right? But that report card, that hope that you are going to have a bestseller, something is going to hit. Look at Mel Robbins. I mean, look at it. For every example we can say on the downside, there's an example on the upside, right? Where
balanced portfolio.
Winners and losers.
Yes. Just don't short the publishing industry.
Can't. Nothing to short.
Well, and it's, speaking of how the economics of publishing works, I mean, look at one of the biggest deals in publishing happened 2 years ago when KKR acquired Simon & Schuster.
Right.
And it's going to be interesting to see.
Does anybody know how that's going?
I don't think they had a great year.
I don't think
year.
that, they distribute me, so I'll reserve commentary. But they're certainly making some changes there, and it's going to be interesting to see where KKR goes next. It's interesting. KKR sold an audio company to acquire Simon & Schuster.
Really?
So
talk about the distribution a little bit, if you would. I'm curious. I mean, I'm asking a question here, but I think it's another feature that people don't understand because of smaller publishers having the opportunity to be on a bigger scale.
So as a publisher, I don't have my own warehouse. I don't have my own sales team. I rely on Simon & Schuster to do all that for me.
They distribute for you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And we're one of probably 125 publishing clients that they represent to the marketplace.
And many of the big five have distribution deals with smaller publishing companies.
Yeah. But it's also, again, Steve, getting back to the economics of publishing, this is the first time I can remember private equity being as involved as they are in publishing. You have KKR owns Simon & Schuster. Elliott Management owns Barnes & Noble. Recorded Books, one of the largest audio publishers out there, owned by private equity, which was owned by KKR, sold to another private equity firm. I think that you're going to see some of that happen more as we roll out into the future of what book publishing is going to look like. I do think we need some fresh ideas. We need some fresh impact of investment to either, help publishers compete with Amazon in a lot of ways, but also work with them more in building out the business and discovering new readers and finding the audience. I mean, Amazon is a big piece of book sales, right? I mean, there's no way around it.
And there's also this cottage industry, so to speak, of hybrid publishers. So a hybrid publisher—
Very important to talk about.
Right.
Yes.
So a hybrid publisher is a small imprint, individually owned, usually 5 to 6 people, and they are working with authors directly, and there's a profit share model. So if I'm an author working with a traditional publisher and I write a nonfiction book, it's usually 10%. I get a 10% royalty. 10 to 12
10% of the sales.
Of the sales, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. But with
10% of cover price.
Of cover price. Or sometimes net. Hopefully list, but sometimes net.
Okay.
And then, but with these hybrid publishers, I go into business with you as a publisher. As an author, I go into business with you, and we make a decision, okay, as the author, I'm going to get 70%, and you're going to get 30%.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's the hybrid model. And those models are doing exceptionally well.
And that grew out of traditional publishing, actually, because there were always profit share arrangements that were made for some authors, like a Ken Follett, who would come, I don't even remember if he was the actual one, would come to a publishing house and say, the only reason I'm going to publish with you is because I want a profit share. So that it started there, and I think then went to,
so it's more hybrid.
One of the reasons that authors are drawn to the profit share model is, number one, they have a lot more control creatively over what their book's going to look like, how they're going to put it out into the marketplace. And two, because when you're working with a traditional publisher today, they really rely heavily on you to publicize and market your book. doesn't mean that they're not going to support you, but they're looking for you to do the lion's share of the work. And the authors are saying, okay, if I got to
might as well get a bigger share.
Exactly.
The other thing is, it's just to go away from hybrid for a minute, but even the bigger publishers now, you really, it's hard not to advise a reasonably rewarded with a good advance guarantee author not to hire his or her own publicist. That has become more and more common, right?
So the author hires his own publicist?
Hires his own publicist.
And in fact,
So what do I need the publisher for?
Well, there you go.
Distribution,
Anthony?
sales.
What do I need you for?
Yeah,
I'm thinking about writing a book now.
That is a big appeal.
It's a big, I think
when you sell a book as an editor, as an agent.
We
that's
do a
an
lot of
appeal.
hybrid deals, and
You do?
I think what people really like about us is that we have a really good team of editors behind us. We're really collaborative. We involve them in the process. Authors don't want to get involved in the overall production, design, distribution, and that's still a critical role that we play. I think also authors like to have us help them navigate and give them advice and give them
And things
some
are
guidance.
changing.
Right,
And
exactly.
And a certain
shifting
level
so
of legal
fast.
protection as
Right,
well,
right.
because there are lawyers in house. There are,
Yeah.
there are legal reviews of books that are
Right.
published
Right.
that are
And-
mandated
right.
by the publishing house. So there's a
Legal
less a
vetting.
chance of recall or being
when
sued.
you
or all kinds
self-publish,
of things.
there's limitations on what your distribution is. You can't do translation rights, you can't get international distribution. And those are a lot of things we bring to the table. So, yeah, but it's certainly something that we've been asked.
Well,
It
the
also
other thing,
frees
too-
up the author to continue
Exactly.
writing
Yeah,
books.
because they want
Why
to
does-
write. They want to be
they want
creative.
They're not business.
Yeah,
They don't want to
wanna
run a
be in the
publishing
business.
business.
They don't want to be in the business.
Right.
However, this is something that we're as agents we're tussling with. If there's a publisher or an author who wants to work with a hybrid, again, we are supposed to be fiduciaries. So we want to make sure that the author is getting the best deal.
Right.
And sometimes the best deal is to work with a hybrid
Right.
publisher.
There's a lot of authors that will come to us because they like some of the other authors we've published. So
That's right.
they'll say to themselves, I want to be at that publishing company because they published that author whom I really like.
Right.
So it's interesting how sometimes they think and operate when they're decision making.
Yeah.
Okay. This was wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. I learned a ton.
You still want to write your books?
Well, I'd like to write a book. I need to know what I want to write about.
There's always that, yes. You need
Ask
to figure
AI.
that out.
I'll ask AI.
Exactly.
Thank you all very much. This was
Thank you.
wonderful. And let's tie it up a little bit. Like from each of you, if you had a message to give to the state of the publishing industry today, first you, Anthony, what would you say?
I think remain bullish, be resilient, understand that change is coming.
Well, change is here.
Yes, and embrace it. And we need to work together to figure out a way forward and work together to continue to find readers and publish great books.
Jennifer?
I basically second that. And I say to the authors, since I am a literary agent, be hopeful but understand that it is a high bar. In fiction, we want to see everything come together, right? You want to see plot, you want to see pacing, you want to see characterization. And some of the discerning factors for me when I'm reading the 100+ things that come in every week are seeing everything together. And that is a concert that is difficult to, mimic. Right? And when you talked about recognizing talent, that is our job. We're talent pickers in the end, literally, and talent recognizers. And that is what I'm looking for, certainly in fiction. And then I've talked about what I look for in nonfiction, experts of all stripes in all areas. But I think authors have to work very hard to understand that there is a reason why people get published. And they have to do their best. They have to turn in, what they think is their best work, and they have a voice, and they will find it somehow through these new ways or whatever.
Regina?
Well, I would say that publishing is recalibrating. And I think it's very important for authors to try to educate themselves and be on the cutting edge of ideas and imagination, and don't get too bogged down on all the tools and everything that is kind of like distracting you from the stories that you have in your heart that you want to get out into the world, because there is a readership for it. And I think authors should be very hopeful.
So I'll just say if I had to sum it up, I'd say what I've learned is that AI is definitely changing your industry, like it's changing all industries. This is probably the first in a series of what we're going to do about how the world is evolving very rapidly. And I've learned a ton. I really appreciate you all coming today.
Thanks
for having us.
us.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute investment advice. The host and guests may hold positions in stocks discussed. Opinions expressed are their own and not recommendations. Please do your own due diligence and consult a licensed financial advisor before making any investment decisions.